Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my podcast, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon to stay up to date for interviews coming your way. For those of you who have been here before, we thank you for coming back here. And for those of you who also want to listen to my audio syndicated podcast, you could find me on mindbodyspirit.fm as well as through their mindbodyspirit.fm app that you could download. Today's guest in the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder is Dr. Mark Pitstick and Dolores Cruz. Dr. Mark and Dolores helped to compile a book through Helping Parents Heal called Shining Light Parents Speak. They're going to be discussing this book as well as tools for grief and processing your losses so you could transform your own pain to generate connectivity and openness to the eternity of life itself. And so without further ado, we bring on Mark and Dolores as our honored guests in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. It's my great honor to have Dr. Mark Pitstick and Dolores Cruz as my guests on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Thank you so much for coming on here, on the channel.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for viewers, we connected through, the conference that we're in for Helping Parents Heal, the annual, the conference in Phoenix that we're just at, where, over 1,000 Shining Light parents were there, and I hope you got out of it as much as I did because that was profound. But I am certainly moved by, the book that you compiled, Shining Light Parents Speak. Could you just give our viewers a little bit about, before we talk about the book, a little bit of background about Helping Parents Heal for some of my new viewers who haven't heard about the organization and how the two of you were able to, have your paths coincide with the work that you're doing?
Yes, Helping Parents Heal is an international support organization for parents whose children have passed away. And what's wonderful it was first of all founded by Elisabeth Kubler-Ross and Mark Ireland back in about, I believe it was 2012, after their own sons had passed away, and they had wanted to come together with a support organization such as this. But what makes it even more different, I guess, than others, special, is the discussion that we have about afterlife, about how our children are still here with us, the kind of signs and connections we continue to receive. So it's a beautiful place to go and share this and hear other stories and that validate your own experiences. So that's the way I found when I found Helping Parents Heal. And I know that Mark has had his own relationship with Helping Parents Heal.
Yeah, I started working with them over 10 years ago. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, the co-founder and president, emailed me and asked permission to use one of my articles, because I have 121 articles that cover everything, all the big questions at soulproof.com. And I said, of course, you're welcome to. And she said, wow, this is so good. We really appreciate it. And I said, I got into the healthcare field. I actually got into the topic of afterlife, searching, is there really an afterlife? When I was 20 years old, and I was a part-time respiratory therapist. I was in pre-med, and they trained me, a lot of training, so I could help in codes, resuscitations. And I was running down the ER, code 4, my first one, I'm all ready to save lives. It was a little 5-year-old boy that had been hit by a car. And we worked on it for 4 hours, and despite our best efforts, he passed. And I staggered out of the ER just in time to see the head doc tell his parents that their only son had passed on. And I still can see their faces contorted in grief. And, I wasn't prepared for that. I mean, who is? And then I further staggered outside and literally shook my fist to the sky and cursed God And I said, what good, first of all, I don't know if you are there, but if you are, because I was brought up Lutheran, God's all knowing, all caring, all powerful.
Mm.
I said, if that's true, why didn't you prevent that? And if you could prevent it and you didn't, then it's not true. So that single event really caused me then to go to theology school instead and spend the rest of my life literally searching for evidence. And then once I found out there really is an afterlife, okay, how does that affect the way we live? And so when Elisabeth Boyson was telling me about the organization, I said, I'm all in, how can I help? And it's been such a wonderful experience with them.
Oh, yes. And I think when it comes to the passing of almost anyone that we know, it's out of the norm. It's disorder, in a way. And, helping parents heal, has the possibility to help people define some order in all this, or just some, a greater sense of purpose or connectivity when all things seem to be out of sort and not making any sense, and to have maybe a potential faith to turn into a belief and to turn into a knowing with clear proof evidence. But could you tell us a little bit about how your book came along? Because I, gave it to a friend of mine and they loved every page of it. But for my viewers who haven't heard your book, I think it's remarkable about how you're able to organize it, in and of itself. But could you just tell us a little bit how the genesis of the book began and what's in there for the reader?
Well, I'll talk about the genesis, and then you can take it from there, Dolores.
Sure.
So I was sitting in this very chair. It was a remarkable evening, and again, Elisabeth and the vice president of Helping Parents Heal, HPH, Irene, asked us to interview myself and Lynn Hollahan to interview parents. They very correctly intuited that interviewing these parents would make wonderful videos and there would be so much information we gathered from them. And so we started that task. We ended up interviewing 130 parents, 5 at a time. Yeah, went from October last year to March of this year. Well, the third evening we did that. Well, let me back up a little because this kind of sets the stage. Such a great story. So the second set of interviews, there were 6 moms, myself, and Lynn, and we're on Zoom. It's kind of like this, only there were 8 of us in our little squares. And we're getting to know each other. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded, but we have all 8 of us that witnessed this. So one of the moms, Lisa Wilcoxon, who is an impressive medium, shared that both of her kids, boys, had passed. And one of the moms said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And mom said, and Lisa said, "Well, thanks, but they're in touch all the time. They are always up to something. They're really good at manipulating electronic devices." Well, just then, and that saying "just then" keeps popping up, Dolores. Just then, above my head were multiple balloons and
Wow.
fireworks shooting up in the air. Now, on Zoom, you have a reaction button where you can push and there'll be like one balloon or something. But this was, I've never seen anything like it since or before. And so here's all these balloons and fireworks going off. And one of the parents said, "Wow, Mark, that's cool. How'd you do that?" And I said, "I didn't do anything. I thought one of you did it." And Lisa said, "That's my boys. That's what I was telling you. They're always doing stuff like that." So I actually said to myself, "Oh, so that's how these interviews are going to go, huh?"
Mm.
So then the third set of interviews, I was interviewing a couple named David and Allison, and their last name is Allison. So yes, that makes the mom's name Allison, which is funny. And so they're telling us about their son, Davy, who passed, and that he came through very loudly and clearly. Because one of the questions we asked is, how do you perceive your child's living presence? And they said, "Oh, he comes through a lot and loud and clear." Well, just then, a voice yelled at me from the upper right, and it went into this part of my head. And people can watch the video of this. It's at the 30-minute point in the third set of interviews under helpingparentsheal.org/YouTube videos, and then the top sub-tab. And so I actually looked up like that. I touched my head, and what I heard was, Mark, you should write a book with the best of these interviews. It would be really good. Call it Shining Lights Speak, is what I heard, and it'll help a lot of people. And I said, well, I think I just heard from Davey, and you're right. He does come through loud and clear. And after that, because I'm not a clairaudient or anything like that. I may have periodic abilities, but nothing I can make a living with. And but I was flabbergasted. Again, you can see this on the video. I went, wow, it's like I had a hot flash or something. I said, oh my God, 3 times, and I'm waving my face. And it took me a couple minutes to get my crap together to where I could continue with the interview. Well, that night I slept just 4 hours. I woke up with the outline for the book in my head, and and then I put out a call for some help. And you want to take it from there, Dolores?
Yes. Yes. So I believe it was around October when you said, hey, we're going to do this book. And you sent out an email for people to the affiliate leaders and caring listeners in particular, because that's who was being interviewed anyway. But anyway, you were asking for some help putting this all together into a book. And I believe I got that letter. And I believe at that time I declined because a lot going on. I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds fantastic, but pretty time consuming. Anyway, so Allison and Anne-Marie Taplin and Nancy Haina were the ones who originally responded and got started on the first few interviews. And then an email came out again. We still need some help, but it was specifically to me and somebody else. And I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe Eric, that's my son in spirit. Maybe he's trying to tell you, hey, here's the next email. I think you should be involved. So I felt that. I felt, I'm going to do this. And so I came in a couple of weeks after the others had already started. And then during the Zoom meeting of myself with them that I had, and Mark, as we were doing a very quick introduction around, turns out that of the 4 of us, Nancy, by the way, has 2 in spirit, 2 boys, but one of her boys and our other 3 boys all passed from an automobile or a roadside accident, a road accident, because I believe Anne-Marie's was on a motorbike. But it was really amazing and so synchronistic that all of our sons, more or less the same age, this was how they passed. And it felt very much like an affirmation that we are here, we were meant to do this, and that our boys were in agreement that we were the ones to do it. And so we began, I think I came in about November, and it took many, many hours, a lot of time to literally go through the transcripts of every interview, which 5 people per interview. So every video, I guess you could say, every recording. I don't remember. I think it was around 30-ish, something like that, recordings, maybe more. And we assigned each other who's taking which one, go through the transcript, decide who's speaking. Mark had 6 specific questions he asked every single person, highlighted those, went through all the answers to highlight what we called the gold, the best parts of those answers. Anne-Marie led us beautifully in this and really created an amazing Google document with all kinds of files. Everything was organized a certain way. We kept obviously meeting often, or even through WhatsApp, keeping up with what's going on, who's doing what do we need, answering questions that each other had. So boy, after all of that work, must have been May or June, maybe it was around May, where we came back to Mark, here it is. We still had to organize everything we each made a chapter, took everyone's answers, beautiful answers, threaded them together, created introductions. Mark wrote a chapter or two and then forward. Trying to recall, I guess it was a couple of chapters for sure. And then we each had chapters, and forwarded by Elisabeth Boson and Gary. Tell me again, Mark. Gary.
Yeah, Dr. Gary Schwartz.
Dr. Gary Schwartz. I'm sorry, just blanked on that. But amazing. It was amazing. And by the time it was done completely, by the time he had the book cover and everything, it was July. And if you think about, and Anne-Marie came up, noticed this, from the beginning of the interviews to the book done was 9 months, which of course is what it takes to, have a child, in utero and then birth that baby, right? Which is what happened. Conceived by Mark in the beginning. And then, we grew the book and it was birthed in July after 9 months.
It wasn't conceived by me. It's conceived by Davy.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just two quick things there for, I did the interviews, most of them. Elisabeth did a few when I couldn't. And, I was involved with the book all the way and edited and reviewed your stories. And again, the very last time I went through them, I'd heard these stories, I had read them. I had tears in my eyes multiple times. They're that powerful. And it's not just for parents of kids who have passed on, it's for all people. And we can get into that a little later.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'd like to share with you, Dolores, and to the viewers, it gives you an idea of how helping parents heal, people communicate. In other words, some people say, "Oh, Dolores, I'm so sorry your son passed," and she'd be crying, "I know, I can't believe it." And I'm saying to you now, I woke up this morning because I was thinking we do like we've been doing. I'll do the first half of this interview, you do the rest. As soon as I woke up, I haven't even opened an eye yet, and I got a voice that said, "Stay with Dolores, do the whole interview together." And I thought, I bet that's her son, Eric. So, that's how far out, amazing, beautiful this journey is, because we know it's real, and the kids are always coming up with some great surprises.
Wow. Wow. Certainly remarkable, the amount of work, organization. But I'm wondering for the two of you, it seemed like guidance propelled you, but to persevere through such a project, what was your, end goal? Why? Like to have a how and a what, we need to have a strong why. And I'm wondering for you to write a book takes a lot of courage, especially these types of circumstances and organizations of it, dealing with a lot of heaviness. What allowed you to persevere through all the details of it? What's the foundational principle of this book or the intention of it?
I'll start on that one. I'm speaking for Lynn Hollahan, who is my moderator. As we did the interviews, we realized we had no idea how powerful this was. And we had such a sacred sense of sacred responsibility for doing this. At the end of every set of interviews, she and I would just look at each other and go, "Oh my God, we did it again." It's not that we did it, it's the parents and their kids. And I presume all of our angels and guides, it's a whole team working on this. And we can get into a little later the practical potential for changing our world for the better from this. It's a huge project. So once I started glimpsing that and hearing some of the profound statements parents would make, for example, Alice and Allison, and one can never say those words together too many times. When I asked her, I said, how did you get through this? What was a turnaround for you? And she said, I decided if I couldn't sense my child in the physical, I was going to sense them in the spiritual. And it's that kind of just courage, focus, and commitment that really fleshes out the statements that love never dies. And especially moms and dads, they never quit being the parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that agree with every bit of that. And I would like to add that as one of the moms, from a parent perspective, I guess, a shining light parent perspective, this is so validating. So for our parent, or again, anyone who's lost a loved one, this is so validating for the connections that people have these experiences, they have these connections, and they begin to wonder if this is real. They may doubt it themselves. But when you start hearing the stories of others, and then of course you can't help but say, but yes, I had something like that happen. I've been in that situation so many times where I might tell about some of my experiences where Eric and I have been connected, and somebody else will come right in and say, oh, that that actually happened to me, I guess that's real. And so it's so validating, helpful, hopeful, comforting. And the other thing that I just a true believer is community. So I know people who grieve alone, and they don't want to be in a community. Maybe I'm just going to guess that it's you have to be vulnerable. You have to show a part of yourself that hurts. But the community is so healing. It's so supportive. They call it support, and it's amazing what comes from that, the beauty and the love. And you could say out of your loved one's passing comes beauty. And honestly, that is what I have found. And that's how beautiful this book is.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So well said. Yeah, because when there's a lot of suffering and silence, and it's particularly, when it does come to a loss of a loved one, and arguably the most challenging on a human level could be the loss of a child. But when I went as a presenter and first most a participant, to the Helping Parents Heal conference, I would have had no idea in many ways that these were parents who lost kids. I saw that they were laughing, they were smiling together. I could have thought this was, I don't know, just a reunion party. I don't know, like if I just walked into it, and I'm sure everyone is at different stages of processing.
Yeah.
But for viewers, just to backtrack, just the simple title of A Shining Light Parent, could you explain a little bit what that is, and why the significance of that title versus a bereaved parent that's oftentimes, framed, what in my work in clinical counseling and therapy, what does that word, mean, and how could that maybe reframe their trajectory of experience and their grief journeys?
Well, what Elisabeth has said some time back, I don't even know how many years back, I think originally the word bereaved was used, but she says it is such a sad word. Apparently, the roots, the original meaning has to do with being robbed. And I believe she was discussing this with Suzanne Giesman, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mark, but they came up with shining light parent because, and the way I look at it is for two reasons. One is that our children are shining lights and we are their parents. And as we connect with them and they shine through us, we are also shining lights. So it comes from the children and from us. And it is a beautiful way to make reference to a parent whose child is on the other side or has changed worlds. Yeah.
Yeah. And further to your point, Jacob, these parents, especially these shining light parents, yeah, as you say, there are some that early in their grief, they're in the dark night of the soul, of course. And a lot of these shining light parents, the group leaders and the caring listener, were as well. But over time, then they make that transition, and partly because to shining light, to focusing on the positive, because they learn that the more they can be at higher energies, emotions, and ways of being, the more they perceive their kids, because their kids are living in a realm characterized by love and light, peace and joy. So that's like a radio channel. But if the parent is stuck in fear and guilt and anger and deep, deep grief, they're going to miss each other. I was interviewing one dad who is a physician, and his son was a AAA Pittsburgh Pirate outfielder. He was ready to move up to the majors. came home to visit and didn't wake up on earth. I mean, he woke up, in the next life, and he had an undiagnosed heart condition. And, it's tough, especially when the dad's a physician. And I said, do you ever find yourself getting angry about it, sad about it, feeling guilt? He interrupted me. He said, never. He said, I would never let myself feel anything that would diminish my perceptions of my son. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So over time, these parents do become shining lights. Um, when when I went to church, there was this beautiful hymn. It's called "Brighten the Corner Where You Are," and Jesus said, "Let your light shine. Don't hide it under a bushel." Well, you got all these parents shining so brightly. So yes, they had kids pass, and they are going to find the silver linings and share them.
Right.
They are going to have a happy life. They're going to make their kids proud. They're going to find more meaning, and they're going to help make the world a better place. So it's
Yes. And
beautiful to behold.
it is. And I would really like to speak also along those same lines to, the reality of the grief and what it's like having been there. Yes, I, in the beginning, felt like I was in a deep, dark pit. I did not know. I did not see light. I didn't know how I was going to get out. I didn't know how, but I never said that I wouldn't. I just thought there's a way, but I just don't know what it is yet. And because I set that intention to heal, and the word heal, by the way, we are healing by continuing to live our lives to honor our children. That is the healing. It doesn't mean that one day I'm going to go, hey, I'm done. I'm healing. I don't feel, any grief. I mean, I'm always going to miss my child's physical presence. But little by little, because I set that intention, I did see the light again. I did find joy again. And that's what all these parents in this book will say. It starts out so heavy and hard, but that doesn't mean there isn't somewhere to go to a place of shining light. So,
Wow.
yeah.
In working in the mental health field, I've noticed such a correlation with beliefs and behaviors. And, for many, if they believe that death is all that there is, it makes sense to really feel very deeply and feel morose. But then again, if there's a different set of beliefs based off of first, hand experiences or just looking at the courtroom of evidential pieces of continuity of life, then all of a sudden that story does not end with that there's continuity. There's a material child, but then there's also the spiritual child that goes on. And what I love about this particular conversation is you both bring such unique vantage points, Mark, in your own professional way, and obviously Dolores in your own personal connection to grief. But for a viewer who may be listening out there who might have lost someone, on a human level and is going through a tough time, what are some of your perspectives that maybe you've gained from the book that you like to share, or just personal and professional tips to really allow themselves to maybe find meaning through their pain, or finding purpose, or finding connectivity when all has, on some level been lost?
Well, as I mentioned, uh, it is, people will say in the beginning, "Oh, I have no choice." And you may feel like, and that's a whole other conversation, but you may feel like you had no choice in what happened. But the truth is, you do have a choice in what you're going to do with this.
Right.
Um, it's, I, you really can say, and I've heard people say this, I will not laugh again. I will not smile again. They feel like that might be dishonoring their child. And I just see it in a totally different way. I think it totally honors my child to smile, to laugh. If it were the other way around and, I was there and he was here, I wouldn't want his life to stop. And I'm not about to do that. If anything, uh, I and I know Elisabeth says this, we reach back a hand, we find a way, we find this community, and then you help the next person, because that is why we're here. I truly believe that we are here to love and to serve. I mean, if when all is said and done and everything you're doing, if that's really, if you could just whittle away, all the extra, that's really what it is, to love and to serve. And it will get better if you allow it. It will. You will find your child. And by the way, the signs are there. I've learned, I've read. I mean, I'm just one of those people. I've read, I don't know how many books, hundreds, I think, and listened to people speak like Mark Pitstick and others, in just all this area of afterlife and spirituality and just all of that. And I was able to see that there is more. Finally understood the bigger picture, that my child is here, that all of our loved ones are here. We had beautiful speeches at the conference by, I don't know, Mark Anthony and also Gary Schwartz, about the science behind the fact that they haven't gone anywhere, the energy in it. So if that's, people like to look at it that way, then there it is. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll share to that question. There's so much in the book that answers that, but I'll just cover 5 areas quickly. First is using conscious language. I'll let you and Dolores float so far on words like pass away and lost.
Mm.
They pass on, but they don't pass away, and nobody is really lost. I like the Native American term, change worlds the best, because that's accurately what it is. So there's a whole section in the book on conscious language. Another thing is for people to learn the evidence Dolores referred to. There's scientific, clinical, and then what we call experiential evidence, meaning based on firsthand experiences that people have. And those are discussed respectively at soulproof.com in articles number 160 and 115. So the evidence is out there. Next thing, and so many of the parents focused on this, is trust your senses, because you don't have to be a medium to detect your child. And so many parents could see, hear, feel, or know, but this is subtle. And sometimes, if it's not rock solid like this bottle or something, the brain will say, oh, that's not really real, when in fact, the parent saw their child out of the corner of their eye, but they did smell their cologne, they did feel their presence. So a lot of the parents said, trust what you're picking up, because that's the beginning of a new relationship. Next thing I would say is reach out. You don't have to do this alone. You have to suffer in silence. There are so many resources in helping parents heal.
Mm.
And those are listed on the website, helpingparentsheal.org/resources/shining light resources. And it's a whole big page of all kinds of ways that there's help. For example, Caring Listeners, a group I started about 7 years ago. Dolores, you've been a member of that for quite a few years, which is how we first met. But these are shining light parents, been through the dark times, and now they're amazing. They're some of the most peaceful, loving, happy, amazing people I've ever met in my life. They listen to people free. They will develop relationships. They're not trained therapists. They don't claim to be, but they'll listen and they'll share what worked for them and they'll make suggestions. So all of that is out there, and that's a great start.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so for viewers, just correct me if I'm wrong, to summarize it, it doesn't need to come from a right brain only standpoint to connect to a loved one, or to just know that there's eternity, that you could. It's very eclectic. It's broad-based in just in terms of how you could pick up the
Oh
pieces
yeah.
together to develop a greater sense of awareness. And, now the science is coming out. Maybe you're left brain dominated, that, might speak to you more, or some
Right.
people who are more intuitive, that piece does too. I'm sorry, Dolores, you were about to say something.
Just real quick, and I just want to share that in the book there are hundreds, I guess, of examples of all the different ways that parents have connected to the children. I mean, they could be through, we've heard of the ones through nature, electronics, songs on the radio. And then, as Mark mentioned, sometimes you actually see them or hear them. So it's beautiful to read all of these as all these examples, because it's there. The relationships, it does continue.
Oh, absolutely. And having a near-death experience, I do not like the word death. I don't believe in it. I've been there, done that. But for viewers' standpoint and practicality, I'm going to use this term. My question is, death seems to be transformative, obviously, for souls who cross over. They're eternal. But I've also found that death is equally as transformative, potentially, for those, who lost, not lost loved ones, geez, I'm trying to have the language right, but have, shining light folks. And, I was at the Helping Parents Heal conference, and I noticed how many people, and not all, but just how many people's lives were transformed, not just from finding meaning, but just how many people developed their intuitive gifts, mediumistic gifts, and it just seems like the shake-up period of their soul. And I'm wondering, what's that about? And maybe that's a Mark question, or Dolores could chime in, but like, what does death do that really like cause this phenomenon where all of a sudden not in all cases, but I see such an undeniable transformation unfolding right in front of my eyes that I cannot deny.
Sure. I'll say a few things about it, and then I'd like to hear what Dolores has to say. In Helping Parents Heal, we have a saying that when a child passes, or any other big change or challenge, it can make you better or bitter.
Mhm.
And it ultimately is a choice, and sometimes a moment to moment choice. Now, as you know, the brain perceives much less than 1% of reality. And it kind of runs the show for most people. They think, those are called materialists. They think the only thing that's really real is what you can see. But what we call spiritually transformative experiences, or STEs, can occur. And one of the triggers of this would be the bodily death. We try to use modifiers with the word death. The bodily death, the death of a person's earth suit or human frame, because it can rock your world. It's so easy to slumber through an earthly incarnation. Michael Newton, founder of Life Between Lives therapy, said that that's one of the most common shortcomings of souls. They wait in line to come to earth because of all the rich experiences and potentials for growth and service. But then they get here and they major in minors. Oh, who's Madonna getting married to? And, who won the Super Bowl? And stuff that really doesn't matter. Sorry, Madonna. But so when something like a loved one passing happens, it can wake you up, shake you up, and make you ask those big questions. That, by the way, should be taught to every school child. And religion's done a pretty poor job covering these bases. Who am I? Why am I here? What happens after I die? Is there really a creator? If so, why is there so much suffering? How can we best live while we're on earth, knowing the big picture of life? But, we're getting there. And what HPH and these parents are doing is going to take us a lot closer.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. And as you've probably heard, I'm assuming, but you know, uh, parents will describe that feeling in the beginning as being totally broken open. I will agree with that. That is what it feels like. And then you've probably heard, but that's when the light can come in.
Mhm.
That is when you are broken open. I've also heard it put by a couple of other spiritual speakers that it is through great love and great suffering that we experience great transformation. And it's for that reason. It's because, as Mark mentioned, I remember nothing else mattered anymore. All that mattered was the love I have for my child and what just happened. And knowing that I needed to somehow try to understand this. And that was my search that began that search. But yes, I think that's what it is it allows the light to come in, as awful as it feels in the beginning, that's a transformation. And, you've heard of the butterfly, right? The caterpillar. Imagine what that caterpillar is going through in that cocoon. It's just being kind of destroyed in a way and then re-put together, and it comes out so beautifully. So, I mean, that's the way I see it now.
Very, very well put, very well said. And I just think there's so much congruency with near-death experiences, and people who have STEs or losses of loved one were in a sense are looking at one of the utmost fears that people could have, in human psychology, of death, and you look straight at it only to find the eternal light behind, the darkness of death. And I think that's what a lot of people find. And there's different paths up to the mountain to get there, different routes, but they're all coming to same conclusions, and it's a beautiful transformations, that direct exposure. And I think for many, it's what they walked into, but what they walk out of it is something entirely different. So yes, we're getting a little bit down to the wire here. I love the quote by Eli Wiesel, I believe, who said that God created us because God, we're all of God's stories in a way. And your book is a compilation of, I believe, 130 stories, if I'm right or wrong, about, shining light parents who have been able to find transformation and have able to not be defined by the story of death, but have been able to define their stories. Could you maybe share like a couple stories, that might stick out with you about this, what Suzanne Giesemann refers to as NOE, no other explanation kind of thing, where it's just like with, like things that you just can't possibly explain. Is there any that comes to your mind for viewers listening, just to, kind of create some fireworks here?
Uh, Gosh, does any? I'm looking right now at the book. Did anything come to your mind, Mark, immediately?
Well, there are so many.
Yes.
It's
We
hard to
shared the
count.
one
Yeah.
with Lisa Wilcox, and it's actually been a while since I've
Yeah.
been involved in the book. Um,
I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but
No, no, definitely.
if maybe
Uh,
not that, something entirely else that just shook
well,
you up to a core
here's
that
an
you
i-
heard.
here's an idea. While Dolores is looking for a couple to share, I'd like to get back to the point we made about are these, because keep in mind, these kids that passed, they're quite likely evolved souls. So they didn't need a long earthly incarnation. They have to go through the whole thing like us. And did they have a meta reason for going through this? Obviously, it can help wake up their parents. That touches many people. Um, but we have oftentimes the parents will say, I knew when my child was born that they were
yeah.
special, they were different, they were an old soul. And there's a list of signs, like I asked, and the parents are going, yep, yep, yep. So we're dealing with special souls. They're only a child in the earth from the earthly viewpoint. They may be more evolved than any of us. So with that in mind, this amazing sequence of events has happened. What's today, the 23rd? Um, just in the last month. So I'll just cover it quickly. On August 22nd, we're at the Helping Parents Heal conference. And I'm speaking to a group of parents, I don't know, 400 or 500, and we're talking about the book, and we're talking about that there can be meta benefits, maybe as big as healing our world, making a world a better place. As more and more parents get activated and say, that's enough. I mean, right now, teenage suicide is the number 2 cause of death.
Mm.
All the autism, ADD, imbalances, addiction, and part of, well, I can't get into all the causes, but we know what they are. But when enough parents say, look, that's it, no more, we've got to do something about this, we can turn our world around. So as I was talking about, I just glanced up, and you were there, Jacob. These are 30-foot ceilings, and I saw at the top of the ceiling thousands of smiling faces. It was just a fragment, and even above the ceiling, there was no ceiling in what I saw, and up into the clouds, just thousands of smiling faces, and I thought, oh my God, these are all the kids that are here
Wow.
also. And they are so happy that we're getting it.
Hmm.
But I was in the middle of a presentation, so it's just like, boom. And then I'm back in the presentation, and it was the first of four, and I forgot about it. I don't know how you can do that, but I forgot about it. So about a week after we got back, we had a presentation, HPH webinar, and we were talking about the book. And again, I started in on the theme of this collectively can help reach a tipping point. And just then I said, oh my God, and we have this on video. I said, I just remembered a vision I had during the conference, and I shared what I just shared
Hmm.
with you. At that moment, Elisabeth, my son, jumped in. She said, oh my God, right after my son Morgan passed, she could perceive like telepathic communication. She said, he started telling me the bodily death of all these kids can help heal the world.
Hmm.
And she said, I didn't even know what he's talking about. I couldn't even fathom that. And now here you are talking about it. So the next day, she and I are burning up the internet, emailing back and forth. And then the Saturday of the conference, we had a meeting with all the mediums because the six main mediums that helped the Soul Phone Project were all there. And so
Hmm.
Dr. Schwartz and his wife, Rhonda, the head medium, we all got together. And what was the topic? About all the signs, all the messages they're getting that it's time for a global peace initiative. And they on the other side and we on earth can do it. It's time. So super exciting. And in article 119 at soulproof.com, I talk about this 11 keys to helping yourself, others, in our world.
Hmm. So I guess the
Wonderful.
afterlife is in a retirement community. These souls are quite busy with their work, and yeah, I love what James Van Praagh said. Where not only that the kids, are the children were older souls, but also the shining light parents were evolved older souls for what they're going through. So
Right.
it's mutual. But thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. And I know Dolores, I could feel you have something to say at this time, so I'll give you the floor. Uh,
Just a couple of you said of no other explanations. One is that and it's in the book, of course, this mom named Lynn, her son Ryan passed at age 26. And that had been about 5 years previous. And she was having a particularly hard day because she happened to go through some old photos that she had been kind of putting off doing. And they were from when he was in high school and he had his girlfriend, and they were so great together for so many years. And she just thought, and she just, became, felt very deep emotion in her grief and all of that. She was having a hard time and thinking about this girlfriend named Tasia and how she hadn't heard from her in so long and all of that. The next morning, she gets a text from Tasia, who she hadn't spoken to in almost 5 years, saying, "Are you all right?" And she said, well, I was having a hard day yesterday for sure. She said, I had a dream about Ryan. He told me that I should check on you, that you needed some, and that was so amazing. They ended up having lunch together, soup right after that, and soon after. And just that connection that Ryan's watching his mom and then telling his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, who's now obviously moved on and she's, moved in her life, moved on, but to check in on his mom. And it's just incredible how that all works. And let me just share one other really quick one right here.
sure.
Songs on the radio. This mom has 3 children on the other side, Shane, Nicole, and Ryan. She said, I got in the Uber and this young kid is playing 80s music. And I'm thinking, why is he playing 80s music? And the next thing I hear is, hi, we're your DJs, Nicole and Ryan. And those are the names of her 2
Uh,
kids, 2 of her 3,
wow,
you
wow.
know, just like,
NOE to the thousandth, yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
mhm,
and when you hear one, you can say it's coincidence, but when you hear hundreds and then
over
thousands,
and over.
it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the statistical probability of these things happening at this moment, at this time, is 0.00, it's like, it's remarkable. Like, I remember, I was at my, I'm up of the Jewish faith. We're having a Sabbath meal, and we heard at that night that my grandmother crossed over, and so for me, I'm a big music guy. Music just allows me to feel deeper, and so I'm getting my phone and I'm putting in the car, and I go on Spotify, and what's on Spotify but Grandma's Home playlist, and just that kind of stuff. I'm sure so many could have, but for those who may feel jealous or envious or just feel excluded from, signs, what would you say to those people who may not, really feel their loved ones around them or haven't seen a sign? Because I know I do see that in some of my clients, and I don't know, maybe they're being like one read quarterbacks. If you're familiar with football, they're looking at one receiver, they're locked in on that, and they're not seeing the whole field. But what are your thoughts on people who might be stuck in their, sign finding or sign seeing, whatever you call it? Yeah.
Well,
Well,
first of all, they should buy the book, whether they're a parent
yes.
or
Good
not.
sales pitch. Yeah.
There's shameless promotion, huh?
Yeah.
As these parents share their tips, but my article number 9 at soulproof.com is called Facilitated Afterlife Contacts, or actually it's called How to Visit Your quote departed loved ones now. And so it talks about a number of things, and it turns out that those in the post material world are not so different as on earth.
Mm,
So what do you do on earth? You want to have lunch with somebody. You see if they're available, you set a date, you set a time, you show up. Well, same way with then wanting to visit with your child. Now, yeah, in the beginning, parents may not be able to get a validation that, yeah, their child, but just say, hey, honey, can we get together tomorrow for tea and have a cup set out for them and talk to them as if they're really there, because chances are good they are. So this article number 9 has all sorts of information about how to facilitate the visits, increase the chances of that. And then there's a relaxation technique and guided imagery that helps turn down the brain
mm,
and then allow people to have visits. We did at the conference, parents were telling wonderful perceptions they had of their kids. But again, you got to turn down the brain, which
mm.
thinks it knows everything. But it's so funny because it knows much less than 1%. What would you say about that, Dolores?
Yeah, no, I was going to mention that what helped me, self-guided meditations. First, yours was one of the ones back in 2018 at the conference. I recall being when you were speaking and having that guided meditation, and then learning how to do that on my own, something very similar, and taking myself to a place. This is what people can do to be with their loved one, and seeing them and having a conversation. And it was amazing how good I felt after. You know, I did feel I was with my son, and I think it's because I was. But it's, are you going to allow yourself to do that? I think the part of it is just trusting it and allowing it. Yes, the self-guided meditation or meditation. I have always talked to my son, Eric. Every day I talk to him, whether it's in my head or out loud, doesn't matter. But that's the communication that remains open. And not, I don't assume he's far away. I assume he's right next to me. And by doing that and not expecting any, I mean, yes, asking, but at the same time, not expecting it to be a certain way, and just you'll probably be pleasantly surprised many times at what you get. And then even, I mean, I've laughed at him like, well, that was a good one, or, it's just, and enjoy that. Trust they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, for viewers who think this is all wishful thinking and, they can't handle death, there are many what we call afterlife contacts, or some call them after death communications, article number 28. But there are many dream and waking experiences that are what we call evidential in nature. That is, information came through that could not be known before, but was later shown to be true. So we have some good clinical evidence that these experiences are, at least some of them, on the up
Yeah.
and up reel.
Yeah. You guys have a lot of tools through your articles and your website and through this book. So I really strongly encourage, all viewers to check out. There's, as you say, high tides rises all boats, and you guys are really rising the tides here. And I love the work that you're doing. My last question before we go is, I think right now we're at an interesting time where there's a technological evolution going on. What we're trying to do is to equal the playing field in the spiritual evolution. But it seems like you and Dr. Gary are very much involved in something that's merging technology and spirituality. Could you speak a little bit about this soul phone project that you're working on? Because I am fascinated by that, because so many people, you look at destructions of civilizations, technology has far exceeded the spiritual evolution that's led to demise. But you and Gary, on the other hand, are using them, in unison and harmony. I think that's great, in many ways.
Yeah, well, we only have a few minutes, and that's a
Yeah,
huge topic,
right.
perhaps another show. But
Sure.
I would encourage viewers to visit soulphone.org.
Mhm.
And then under, I think it's interviews, I have posted 3 half-hour videos that I created recently
Mhm.
that describe the Soul Phone project, past, present, future. Because Dr. Schwartz has been working on it for 20 years. And for those who don't know about him, he's a former Harvard and
Mhm.
tenured Yale professor, now professor emeritus at University of Arizona. This guy's a uh, genuine genius. Plus, he had 2 near-death experiences as a child.
Hmm.
So he's been working on this, and right now we have what's called the Soul Switch, and we have about 6 months of beta testing preparation. But the plan is in early 2025 to have everything in place to do 2 revolutionary things. First of all, Dr. Schwartz will announce, and we'll have a big PR firm to assist this. So it's global news that life after death has now been scientifically proven. But we can say that now based on the evidence, based on our research. But we just want to have everything in place before we do a full release on that. The other thing is we'll be ready to publicly demonstrate the technology that shows this binary yes or no communication system. And then, I just spoke with a person today who wants to bring on a investor, a large donor, to help really accentuate the program. So it could be quick than we think, that once we get a breakthrough switch, meaning a yes or no in less than 10 seconds, then it could take as few as 8 of those switches to then duplicate what a keyboard can do. Because it'd be like Morse code, hit switch 1, 3, and 7 for an A. And then we'll be able to text and type with. And we anticipate that once we have a greater quality and quantity of information from these post-material luminaries, and people like Edison and Einstein and Nikola Tesla and others, then that should really speed up R&D on the soul audio, hearing, soul video, what we're doing now, video conferencing.
Wow, remarkable. And mediums
Yeah.
will still be in business after this, right? No, I'm messing, but yeah, I look forward to hearing what's on the pipeline. Well, Dr. Mark and Dolores, it's been a true pleasure. If do you have any last words? Obviously, no last words. We go on forever, but any last messages that you have, and also, where could people find you, find the book? Just very briefly, just to close the loop here during a wonderful conversation that we've had.
It's just that are here. Helping Parents Heal is here for specifically for parents. But if you have another loved one, a spouse or a parent, anyone else, there are other organizations you can reach out to as well. I just highly encourage community. You don't have to suffer alone, and there is hope, and your loved ones are around. So we're here. we're here for
Love
all
it.
of you.
Thank you, Dolores. Thank you. And about you, Dr. Mark?
Well, I would say I would ask people to think of loved ones, people they know, coworkers, etc., that have had a child pass, and help them be aware of this book. It's available at Amazon.com, of course. It's available at my website, soulproof.com. And one of my policies is for anyone who cannot afford it, any of my products, like I mentioned, the facilitated afterlife contact, let me know and we'll send you free digital copies, because we want this to be affordable to everyone. And the other thing is that if these parents can do this, especially, we have one mom who all five of her children passed, and Dolores mentioned Marla Grant, who had three kids pass. If they can do that, then whatever you're going through, the viewers, you can get through this too. And there's help out there. We're all here. We can do this together. And guess what? There's so many blessings. There's so much power waiting to be opened and shared when we work through these challenges that turn out to be just part of life.
Yeah.
Nothing to be afraid of.
Well, I couldn't thank you enough for your generous time. You're welcome back anytime. And I strongly encourage, viewers to check out HPH, as well as Shining Light Parents Speak, and as well as Mark and Dolores and their individualized books and contacts all listed in the descriptions below. But thank you so much for your generous time and your words of wisdom and hard-earned work that you've done to help out so many.
Thanks so much, Jacob. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't be more gracious to have Mark and Dolores on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. They certainly shared a lot of their incredible book, as well as tools incorporated within their book to utilize. And I hope many who might have lost a loved one can now understand that they are going on, they are continuing, and you too could have an ongoing relationship with them that not even bodily death could stop. So I couldn't thank Mark and Dolores for coming on in their generous time, and I thank you all, as well, for tuning in and offering your time. And I hope some of these words brought inspiration and insight on your journey. This is Jacob Cooper signing off. I'll see you here next time on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder, where we continue to ascend the eternal ladder of life. Thank you.